Welcome, everybody. It's episode 215. We're back. We took last week off to do a video about frogs that nobody watched. So everybody check that out.
No, I watched it.
You did? Thank you.
Yeah.
It wasn't really about frogs.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Hopefully everybody gets a strong metaphor sometimes. What else is going on? Veterinary.com, test all your stuff. The end. That's it. That's all you need to know. All right. Sponsor updates. Shane is taking the kids out for pizza and helping the Harbins build a snake building tomorrow. Yay. Congratulations, Shane, Kelley, Small Town Exotics. The Harbins building will be cool. The best part is like easy colubrid brumation. That's a dream that I have each day. So congratulations there. Eileen should be at the Midwest Reptile Show in Indianapolis this Sunday and St. Louis NARBC next week. We might do St. Louis recap as a member live because I don't know if it's exciting anymore, but we'll see. Andrew, I didn't get an update from Andrew. What day is it? So Hillsboro, has Hillsboro happened? You don't know. I don't know. He's in the Pacific Northwest selling ball pythons. That's my update. I'm so sorry. Great Family Snakes, they're going to be at the Huntsville, Alabama Expo this weekend and St. Louis NRBC next weekend. So maybe we could do a full regular episode about that if we have two of them. Same deal. If you buy a snake in person, you get a free RGI test. Show purchases only, not for online. You got to pick it up in person. And Chris, BNS, I didn't get an update, but he'll be at... What day is it? He was already at Gettysburg. I'm assuming he's updating Morph Market as we speak. That's my updates for him. Check it out. Who's in chat? Lisa's here. Shane's here. Stink the Onion's here. Carissa's here. Chris is here. We did it. We opened a podcast. Holy fuck. And we're on Joe volume watch. If you think Joe is too quiet, let us know. Because I'm sometimes too loud because I'm freaking out. And sometimes Joe is too quiet because he's gentle of spirit. All right. This is the book. We got our books handy. If you didn't buy it yet, that's fine. You can buy it later. I have many sticky notes. Oh, it's really heavy. It is a tome of ball pythons, which I like, but I'm like sort of like fatigued my wrists, like if I was holding it too much. So I guess I have to wrist train. But let's start with, who do you think this book is for?
Well, that's sort of what I like about the book is I think it's just like starting off to kind of explain the book in summary. I feel like it is a comprehensive guide to understanding ball pythons that extends far beyond ball pythons, even though that's the primary subject matter here. But it really, the amount of detail is vast, and so it can appeal to experienced keepers, people interested in history of reptile keeping, ball pythons, but at the same time, it's not written in like overly complex language. So at the same time, it's like equally suitable for someone who's a complete beginner. I was even thinking that like with the amount of information that's presented here, you almost don't have to know a single thing at all as long as you're capable of like reading comprehension.
That's hard though. That part's hard.
Well, that's hard, but if you can read and understand, you don't have to know anything else. And this pretty much outlines like almost any case that you can come up with.
Yeah, honestly, my take on it was pretty enjoyable to read, even as someone who has lots of snakes and knows how to take care of snakes. Mm-hmm. And it probably should be required reading for anyone who keeps any boa or python species, period, and probably also all the other snake species, because it's very Like by talking about ball pythons, the back half or so is like just general husbandry stuff, but it's like the most comprehensive version of those discussions I've probably ever seen in a book. Like they don't like some books are like, yeah, sometimes they get diseases, but they have like all the ones that they knew about at that time. So I think even for someone who's already had snakes for a couple of years, it's worth getting it because it fills in some gaps in a formal way that I think you don't get online. It would definitely be required reading if you're new. What about that? Is that too hard of a take?
No, I totally agree with that. And like that's why I often like offer this book to people at shows and stuff, and people who like express interest in getting a snake, especially if they're like not buying a snake today, or if they are. I really feel like people should read the book, and the one thing I always say to them is that online it is so difficult to weave through all the information and misinformation and a million different people who half of them don't really even know what they're doing. And this book just puts it really plainly. And one of the things that they address sort of even in the introduction of the book is that they try really hard to not give like overt opinions and just to state what they believe to be like facts and observations. And another thing I like about it is kind of like some books, and especially some like pseudo experts online, will tell you like this is how to keep a ball python. And pretty much like every section in this book is like, here's every possible way that you could look at this problem. Like they don't really, they say like, here's how we do it, but here's like 10 other methods that might work or other considerations to make. So,
and this book was published in 2006.
2006, which I found like really surprising, actually, just like considering how advanced it is. And we've come like so far since then. And yet there's like stuff in here that like people today act like is like brand new knowledge and stuff, you know? And it's like,
we'll get into that. I have a couple of sticky notes for stuff where I'm like, oh, these fuckers.
Yeah.
What's up, Natural Selections? Adrian. I do read to Shane sometimes because he's too busy to read. In spirit. All right. So let's just like kind of page through. You can comment on each section. I did like they do like systematics, taxonomy, stuff like that, which is cool. We love that for us. And it is very cool. I found out something I did not know, that the holotype of ball pythons is based on a picture. There's no museum specimen. I had no idea.
Yeah. And we have like the Taschen sort of like jumbo coffee table book modern printing of the Albertus Siva illustrations. So I've like been looking at that plate since I was a little kid, and being like, oh, that's a ball python, that's a reticulated python. And it was really interesting for me to find out like that exact image is like our first depiction of a ball python.
It's very
his works are really interesting, actually. There's stuff in his collection that is like, they're essentially like sea monsters and things that apparently existed in his collection, and who knows now what those actually were.
Mermaids.
Yeah, I guess. The history section as well is like pretty in-depth, and I really enjoyed that part. Just like learning about like the cultural significance of ball pythons.
There is a relatively long section about the historical relevance to native peoples of ball pythons, and like which tribes today still give them deference, which ones still worship them, which ones. And I think that's all very cool. And I think most people don't necessarily get that from a YouTube video about a new morph. The cultural significance of the species itself.
Right.
And then go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, and sort of like how you were saying, it does give like a detailed account of their physiology and stuff, and we'll find more similarities as we go on. But a lot of this like general biology is conserved in snakes and especially pythons. So I mean, there is a lot of in-depth here, in-depth information here that, like you were saying, a lot of it really does apply to other species. A lot of them, I mean, they all exist from a common blueprint, you know. So I think that part, especially like, could be useful to everyone, regardless of species that you're focusing on at the moment.
Right. They did, like in the natural history section, there's a lot of stuff like about them eating birds and being in trees in the more eastern part of the range. Like, I thought people just knew that, but I think we were wrong that people knew that, because it became like a gotcha journalism thing a couple years ago. We're like, well, idiots don't know ball pythons are semi-arboreal, and I'm like, but everybody knew they were. We just were choosing a certain sort of tub style for efficiency, but it's obviously like true that they could climb a tree if they wanted to.
Well, I thought that the natural history section was interesting as well. I mean, it goes into not only like the geographical range, but soil conditions, vegetation type, and all. And there's enough information there for you to, even like you're saying, even if you disagree with the like simplistic method of keeping that's outlined later, there's enough information in that natural history section to like come up with your own caging experiments or whatever. And I found it interesting too, sort of the factors that influenced ball python populations and sort of like what influences their distribution geographically, how and also with like the historical sort of topography of the land where they're from, how a lot of the regions like historically did have more predators and different type of vegetation, and then as people came in and cleared out a lot of the land for agriculture, that was like almost beneficial somehow for the ball pythons, where they seem to sort of be found more commonly in these sort of like transitional, more like grassland areas versus like established old growth rainforest, but on the other end, not this dry desert area, which seems to be like threatening part of their range as desertification sort of takes over more of this grassland area. It seems to like shift where they live, and that was kind of interesting. And then, like you're saying, how like there is a lot of evidence that at least seasonally the ball pythons do live in sort of like what we seek to replicate, which is like a secure burrow type, housing. But that there are times when they stray from that, and the different sexes will stray more often than others, or different life stages, and all of that is laid out for you to like make your own conclusions on, at least,
Right. Like the seasonality of the ball pythons is well discussed in here, where like during the dry season, they all just hunker down in a burrow and just stay there and do nothing because they don't they probably can't leave. And they also talk about how they probably don't get water, any liquid water for
and it also coincides with like the breeding cycle, and how like during the dry and breeding seasons they're hunkered together and developing follicles and laying eggs, and all this takes place while they're sort of hunkered down, and then it's once the rains come that babies hatch.
Right. And they do, I think there's a NOAA personal communication, which I thought was interesting, where usually one female broods a set of eggs, but the burrows can contain up to 6 females. So they are communal brooders.
Can be.
Can be. They don't have to be. And he did say, I think this is a NOAA personal communication also, that females will leave clutches to go do something and then come back to it. So that is interesting too.
Yeah. I found that interesting, particularly just because I don't really practice maternal incubation here in my keeping, and I find that even maybe, I could be wrong, but like I also find that like during, like basically from the time a female ovulates to the time the clutch is laid, I don't believe they really drink much, if any. But the moment that clutch is laid, especially after you go through the process of removing the eggs and reintroducing the female to a clean enclosure, the first thing I'll always do is lead the snake to water, and they'll drink like they've like never seen water. You know, even though they've
Mhm.
had a water dish the whole time, it seems like they don't actually drink from it. And then upon laying the eggs, they're extremely thirsty, and so it does kind of make sense, or like I kind of see that in practice, where it's like they do seem to deprive themselves and focus on laying their eggs. But once the eggs are laid, it might be time for them to be like, okay, the eggs are here, and then they may crawl and find water
Right, and we're
or
also not
food.
telling people to not give their snakes water, but like,
No, I always give them water. It just
all
doesn't seem
right,
like they do because
in
they're
the
so thirsty.
like in the burrow situation, because it's probably so
Mhm.
humid, even though it's in the desert or savanna or semi-arid, wherever the ground is
I would
humid.
almost even say like semi-tropical as opposed to well, it's like they do emphasize the high humidity, but it is savanna. It's not, it's not arid. So again,
Right, but if you're like
you're
in the
right.
ground and it's 105 outside, but the ground
Yeah,
is really humid, you may not need to drink water if
right.
you just stay in your burrow for
Yeah,
that
you'll
limited amount of
definitely
time. And then they
conserve
have
water.
Gorzula's estimate for population, and they were guesstimating in ideal habitat one adult ball python per acre,
Hmm.
which would make 18 million adult ball pythons just in Ghana. And I was like, that's a lot.
Yeah,
If
but that
that's
was
true.
interesting too. Because I mean, they described the numbers of ball pythons exported, and we're all sort of well aware of that. But I mean, and I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. Maybe you have it marked, but I believe the number of ball pythons exported per year is maybe upwards of 100,000. Is that
I think it
correct?
was 100,000. It isn't anymore. It's like
Well, that's the
less
thing
than
too.
that.
It's obviously less. It's obviously less, but you hear 100,000 and you think, "Oh my God," and then you think, "But there could be 18 million living quite commonly in only a single country of their range." It's like,
Right. And if 22% of the adult population is gravid females that lay 8 eggs, that'd be 32 million eggs a year,
right.
potentially, just from
Well, it's
Ghana.
just you hear people go on and on, like, "Oh my God, the pet trade is decimating," and there are absolutely cases where it contributes, harmfully to things like that. But it does seem like if these numbers are to be believed, then maybe that's not. It was kind of like that's what I was saying, sort of earlier too, where it seems that like a lot of the threat to their population and their range is environmental effects. Some of those are caused by humans, but it's not the pet trade; it's agriculture and the erosion of plant and land as it becomes more arid. Um,
Hmm.
Basically, desertification seems to threaten them, as well as habitat loss, which I always say is probably a bigger factor in extinction than almost any amount of collecting.
Hmm. I want to know what ball pythons look like in Nigeria
Yeah,
or like further east, because most of our
yeah.
ball pythons are from the west. And I'm always like, are they bigger, smaller? Because like
I
the ball
think it's
python range is really long, but it's very like
mhm,
narrow. It's a narrow, skinny range of like a very
yeah.
particular.
I think a lot of people say that the ones in Ghana are like, and in that sort of river delta area are the bigger ones. Um, and there are some ball pythons on INAT and stuff, but
Hmm.
that's always kind of a crapshoot. There's one I remember there being one ball python on INAT, like I don't remember in what country, but it was in like the range looked about like the standard range, and then there's one dot way off in like East Africa, and I'm like, I question that one, so kind of makes you
Yeah, it could
wonder
have been
about all.
transported by a person on accident or on
From
purpose.
I think most likely, but
Uh, and then there's a lot of accounts of like the worship.
yeah,
And also, I wrote this down: the Dongbe, which is a language, but also is the ball python deity that was worshipped in Benin and Nigeria. Should be the name of a morph. Dongbe. So somebody get on that.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't there be good?
No, I was just agreeing with you. I mean, I did enjoy that part about the cultural significance. I mean, obviously, I've read this book, multiple times, but it's been a while since I went back and read it word for word. So just it's always a nice reminder to hear those sort of things. And I think hearing about like the cultural reverence of these animals, I mean, it's obviously a species that means a lot to me, and I just think it's really interesting that it means so much to these people too. And it's just, I don't know, I just think it's kind of like a reminder that like to make sure that like we should sort of revere these snakes and all life, I believe. So I think it's kind of like a cool reminder of that, and it's cool to just like learn about that culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a sticky note on the front, which is like general feelings, and the only word I wrote was dignity.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of like weird problems with like ball python culture in captive keeping now, and you're like, oh my god, but it doesn't have to be that way,
Right.
People could dignify the species by valuing it a little bit more.
I mean, I've thought for a long time that all those to me, they're all obviously people problems, like people who want to characterize ball pythons as dumb as pet rocks and stuff. I'm like, that just speaks to your own intelligence, and all this clamoring over the market and stuff. I mean, to me, it's really a people problem. And that was another point I just wanted to make, like about the book, because it really does remind you, like, there is so much to this species that so many people discount, and I just think that's ridiculous,
Mm-hmm. Right. Then they go into like physical traits of ball pythons, which would be applicable to other snake species. Like they show whatever internal physiology. They go through intelligence and talk about certain ball pythons recognizing Dave versus Tracy, which I thought was interesting. Chemoreception. So like they go through all the parts of a snake basically, but they just use ball pythons as the basis for that. There's lots of, so this would all be good for a new person, but it would also be good for someone who has snakes, knows how to take care of them, but wants a little bit deeper deeper analysis. They do talk about male combat and it making males depressed, like subordinate males. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
They do have a dissected picture of the hemipenes, the caudal cinque gland, the everted hemipenes, which I think is interesting because now you can actually see how far the probe would go down if you were going to probe.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I found that photo actually interesting as well because we've all seen everted hemipenes, but this is like the first time you see like with your eyes like the inverted hemipenes. I found was like quite interesting.
And it's a big like clear photo, so it's probably worth it for a pet person or a new breeder to just see like, oh, it is, the pocket is pretty deep.
Yeah, it helps you, and I mean, you can literally count the subcaudal scales and stuff there to kind of like really get an understanding of how far when you're learning about popping and stuff like that.
Creative Reptile said, I'm so sick of hearing ball python breeders talking shit on ball pythons. Yeah, it is hard because like, I mean, it's not hard. They're the animals haven't changed. The people around them have. So like, I don't know. We need to probably class up this joint, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They talk about how the skin works, which is probably relevant to new people. That's why I'm like, oh God, if you just like had any species of snake, you should probably have this book.
Right. So much of it is conserved across species. I mean, the biological anatomy and physiology is obviously conserved among many snakes. And then you get to the husbandry part, and a lot of it is conserved as well, I feel.
Yeah.
And we'll obviously get into that as we move along, but it's just, I guess if there's like one point we make to people who are like, oh, I don't care about ball pythons. Well, this book may make you care about ball pythons, and it's going to help you with any species of python. Potentially even reptiles, or just like general mindset when it comes to, like establishing a room for herpetoculture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do agree with the statement, like the driest you can keep a snake while still maintaining a good shed is probably correct, because there's nothing worse than like mold spores.
Mold. Yeah.
So like that's relevant, especially in a world where we use cocoa a lot in this hobby now, of interesting sources that produce interesting dust and mold when moistened.
Yeah. I don't know if we're getting there now or when, but I mean, that's something I have thought for a long time now, that there's nothing that, I don't know, one thing that just like grinds my gears is seeing a photo of someone's racks, and it's a bunch of tubs with no ventilation, with active condensation on every single tub, and a bunch of wet coconut. And I'm like, if your snakes are thriving in this, then I don't know how. And I feel like it's just a matter of time, or that you have mold everywhere and you just are like don't possess the senses to determine that. I don't know. That bothers me. I definitely keep all my snakes fairly dry, and then I really like to, like, a lot of times if they shed on their own, it'll be fine, but I like to just like physically, personally manipulate humidity during those times instead of all the time,
Mm-hmm.
But like they're saying, and like you were saying, that like if you're able to find that perfect balance where it's as dry as possible, but they can complete all their tasks of shedding and whatnot, then that's probably the lowest maintenance option. But I always prefer a little drier, and then I like to just mist on that week. But
yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't like, cocoa is fine for the most part, but sometimes I'm just like, maybe we've gone too far down a particular sort of worldview where we're like dumping piles of water into stuff, and maybe they can't get away from it, and then and it's fine if a lot of the racks are well aerated, so they dry out fast, but some of them are not. So,
well, that's the thing. It's just that like some of them are fine, but some of them are not, and it's probably like you're teetering a fine line between good sheds and scale rot. And
especially in like a little cage, like where
that just
they can't
concerns
escape.
me. But
Ours here. Alicia's here. What's up? So I thought that was cool. It's worth talking about. It's worth reading and thinking about, like, in your system. I always would prefer higher humidity, drier cages. Like, so 100% agree. Then when we get to color and pattern, there's a little interesting section where they talk about something that I really strongly believe, that like, if a morph occurs in a species, it could be cool, but if that species is hard to propagate and dies all the time, people aren't going to want to invest in it because they don't have any certainty that they'll be able to propagate the morph themselves. So they talk about the commonness of a ball python begets the morph part, like the ease of care begets people believing that it's worth it to buy the morph or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's something I've just always liked. I like that once you get down the system with ball pythons, it's a fairly easy system. You don't have to like be terrified that you're gonna be unable to keep the snake alive or reproduce it or something. I mean, a lot of times the comparison I think about there in my life is just if anyone's like familiar with the fish hobbies and stuff. I mean, to me, there's a reason why like guppies and bettas and stuff are some of the most popular and some of the most like lucrative fish species with the most diverse amount of morphs and stuff is because like just about everyone can keep and breed a guppy, you know, and even though each one is not that expensive, I would argue that it's like one of the most, you know, it holds one of the biggest shares in the entire fish market. I think ball pythons are kind of like that too. Like people like, it's the same thing. I mean, like I think it's why like corn snakes are great. I guess hognose are kind of coming up. Ball pythons, you've got like boas to some degree, and blood pythons are trying to get there, you know. But it's like, I think people do want like sort of an easy. They want to be comfortable with the, you know, the base care, and then expand from there. Not to be like, this snake is $20,000 and I don't even know if I could keep any of them alive or something, you know.
And there are nerds that will want a $20,000 snake, but like for most people, most of the time, they don't want it to be nerve-wracking. You know, their snake spills a water bowl and then desiccates and dies immediately because it can't handle 24 hours without fresh water. You know, so not everybody's into that, so it's okay. But then they go into the different structures in the cells that create color, which we love that. That's good for new people to learn. Then there's a cute glossary. We love glossaries too. And there's a lot of actual like citations in this. So that's good. It's not all just like opinions. I have spicy and sassy written on page 56.
There were a few parts, a couple parts like that. What was the line that caught your attention?
We feel strongly that there are some names that should not be accepted as morph names. It is not desirable for any one lineage to possess a name such as hypo, melanistic, or leucistic as a label for their morph. They are descriptive terms and should be used to describe many different morphs. For example, there are at least 20 morphs that can be described as hypo.
Right.
What do you think about that? Because I call ghost hypo now because it's like common vernacular.
Yeah. I mean, it was the same thing for me. I mean, for the most of my foundational time in ball pythons, it was ghost, right? Orange ghost, blue ghost, green ghost, whatever. Over time, it became apparently more proper to call it hypo, but this take did stick out to me as well, and it was something that like I hadn't really thought about since, you know, this change. But like, it is true. I mean, like hypo is just a descriptor, and to call a morph that, it does make sense. Just the hard part is that I always wish that, like, why is a hypoazanthic called a ghost? If there wasn't this confusion between a ghost morph and a ghost, which is a designer combo morph, if there wasn't that confusion existing, then hypo could be ghost and we would all be fine. But now there like exists this other layer of confusion, which I think is why we don't call hypos ghosts anymore, because ghost already existed as a name for a designer term, which complicates the whole thing. If it didn't, then I would say
ghost would be a fine name for it by itself because it does look like a ghostly version of the pattern, right?
Right. And now we're just too far gone. There's no changing the name. No one's like going and changing the names in boas and changing the names, and you know.
Right. Well, the hypos and boas and the hypos and corn snakes do not look like ghost. They don't look pale and glowy. The anery plus hypo makes an animal that looks like a ghost in those ones. It's because the ball python naming convention kind of started off of corn snake naming conventions. It got confused because technically, like all the T pluses, you could have called all those hypos or whatever. So one of those could have been picked first, called hypo, and then you would have made a ghost that made more sense. Maybe the hypo orange ghost thing should be called magical blue snake, and we just go with that. What about that?
I just think, like, I wholeheartedly agree with their statement that we shouldn't name things that can describe at the time of writing 20 morphs and now probably 50 morphs, you know. I totally agree with that. I just think we're like, I think in this case, I think we're too far gone. I don't
Right, the
think.
horse is out of the barn. You cannot close any doors fast enough.
I don't
And
know
then they
why. Yeah.
Yeah. Then they go into like a little verbal description of different morphs that were at the time available and then pictures.
Mhm.
And I think
Yes.
that's a good way to do it because you need pictures. But it's interesting seeing like the old names for some things.
Mhm.
And the fact that like some stuff was hyphenated and it isn't anymore. And I'm like, where'd the hyphen go, bro? And they didn't know bananas were sex linked at this point, so they don't mention that. And then there's
You
some
also
stuff that's
you also have coral glows, which were originally called white smoke before coral glow took over and before we figured out that they were the same as bananas. Which I don't know how they didn't figure out they were the same as bananas, but
and
I
then
guess back then too, people would name. They would have two morphs that they even assumed were the same, but if they came from two different snakes out of the wild, they felt it deserved another name to differentiate the lineage. Now I don't know if I don't know. With some
now
things,
it's
I'm not sure.
almost like you're right. It might almost be more complicated because if we have like 3 kinds of ultramel and
Yeah.
4.5 kinds of black pastel.
Right. Back during this time period, and I mean, I remember because this is when around the time that I first started getting interested in ball python morphs and stuff. I mean, this really was the compendium of all morphs, and it seemed like a lot, and it was still a lot to get down, but it wasn't too much, and so we were always looking for little nuance and different lineages and changes. And now it's like there's so much and there's so many combinations that we like strive to make it like as easy as possible because it's not easy at all to understand all of these morphs, especially for someone who's like just getting into it.
And then I was going to say the clown. I've heard this version of the story where the clown was named after the eye drip underneath the eye. But a lot of people say the clown drip is the like flames that drip down from the dorsal pattern.
Yeah.
And I was like, this sounds more right.
Well, I'm pretty sure Tracy is the one who named, well, they were at least some of the people who, like it's mentioned in here. I always thought it was like, I guess I had heard the story that there were like multiple clown babies, but sometimes I get it confused with like the story of another morph or something. I had always, kind of thought there was one clown, but the introduction of clown to the hobby was apparently with 5 separate babies, and
all just from the same clutch, or
well, they
the
all
same
came.
importer.
They all came in from, I believe they all came from Noah. I believe. Again, I don't know. Maybe I just shouldn't even say that if I'm not totally sure. But I know the Barkers. I'm not and I don't think it was really specified in the clown section here. I know the Barkers had a hand in bringing in those clowns. I'm not sure if they all. I don't even believe that they all ended up with the Barkers or what it was, or if they ordered one and then found out there were 4 more in existence or something like that. But I do believe that the story of the clown naming, I believe it was Tracy who named the clown because of that teardrop. So if she's writing that that's why it was named herself in this book, I would assume that that is the story.
I've just heard like the side flame version. I've heard that probably 20 to 1 times versus the tear.
I don't think that's true at all.
Right. Well, it can't be because if she wrote it,
even,
I just think people made shit up. What do you think about that theory?
Yeah.
And then they go through like the morphs that were like existent, even more morphs that were existent at the time. A lot of them are like we now know are not really a thing.
Yeah, we now know a lot of them were non-reproducible. There's a lot too that are like really interesting, and they probably were morphs, and they've just been like lost for some reason. I think the the thing about the morphs is like you buy this book written in 2006 today with like you have to make the assumption that if there's a morph section, it's going to be outdated. I mean, they acknowledge that like by the time this book is written, there will be more. You know, there will be 20 more morphs, and just at the rate where we were moving, you acknowledge that this morph section is going to become outdated. However, I think the cool thing about this collection of morphs as it exists is it's no longer really like a comprehensive list of morphs, but what it is like a really good historical snapshot of what the morphs at this time. So like a lot of these animals in here, there was one like here you have like white smoke, the original wild caught. So like it's not every day that you see like the founding coral glow or something, you know, and there are a lot of animals in here that are denoted as like this is the first one, you know, and it's, so it's really cool as like a historical snapshot. And then like you said, yeah, like seeing all the ones that people thought
the name, what was the name for champagne? Oh, mint pearl. I guess champagne got renamed at some point, but the mint pearl that was
black
unproven.
Stripe was tri-stripe.
Right.
Apparently they called super pastels opal.
Yeah, and the Neo, which I don't know if ever got proved out, it looks like a paint.
Yeah, it's kind of wide. It's like widely assumed that Neo was a paint type animal. That was just something that Ralph Davis had, and I'm also not positive if he ever proved it out or if it didn't make it for one reason or another. And nowadays we just kind of assume it was a paint. I'm not sure if that was ever proven. Again, maybe I'm just like also talking about rumors, you know, but it's like I believe that's what it is.
Go into
Neo was a cool snake.
Right, disabusing people of the notion that jungles or labyrinths or whatever versions like are all for the most part non-reproducible, like error snakes, and they have a very predictable look. And she talked about buying some for $1,000 at a show somewhere. So like I think the fact that jungles aren't reproducible is something that a new person should read a lot, because that question comes up on Facebook even now. Like they've hatched a thing, they think it's a morph, it's clearly a jungle, like that phenomenon happening again. I guess people just need to relearn that over and over because it happens so often.
That happens a lot. I mean, that seems like that happens every year, that someone posts a snake that they think is some fancy thing, and it's just something that like most of us have seen a million times or have already written off or something. And
right. Well, that's because there's a new person every day. You guys make me want to read this book. Well, that's the whole point. Sorry, I got excited. Good. What's up? Did you hear Dave Barker is supposed to speak at the IHS meeting?
No,
it makes sense. It's in New Mexico. He could drive there. That'd be fire. And then I wanted to comment on the spider part. We have observed that spider balls do have problems with normal head and neck motions. Other breeders have confirmed that to us, the anomaly associated with this morph. Certainly, most spider morphs do not exhibit this problem. If it is determined the problem with head and neck movements are inherited condition, we recommend that snakes with this problem not be bred. So there. Boom. Suck it. Sorry. And then circus, which looks like Motley or one of the other things, keyhole clowns.
That's what I was thinking. Probably like a Motley clown. It's really cool.
Fire, honestly.
Yeah.
And there's lots of pictures. So that part's fun too for kids and people who don't like reading.
I definitely spent a lot of time just looking at these pictures when I was a kid as opposed to reading every word.
Right, you don't have to read every word. It's okay. But the pictures are fun. It's fun seeing like the old versions of things. They're really dark.
Right.
Like IMG, ball python looking thing. Cool. Very cool.
That was sort of the point I was going to make too, though, that like I kind of go on about this a lot, about how like people seem to believe that ball pythons and ball python morphs are like incompatible with this notion of like phenotypic variability and selective breeding and stuff. And that just like always bothers me because I feel like that's what I've like done since day one, which is like try to selectively pick and pair and breed things that were nicer than things that were supposed to be the same or whatever, you know. And I've always sort of felt that like a lot of our starting point, like back in the day, you would see pastels, for example, is just like a big one that because that was like, you know, something I would study all the time back in the day is like, what's the best pastel? Why is one pastel nicer than another? What's the best line? There were all these little questions that like no one cares about anymore. It always bothered me how like you would get people that like there's basically two ways to make a morph in or like to make a morph combo in my opinion is you can either make it as fast as possible with the first animal that appears for sale to you, or you can make it the best way possible by like taking your time, not just buying the first male that fits like based on the words in the name, but the one that looks the absolute best and breed it to one that has like a phenotype that you think will complement that. And there are like a lot of genes involved in ball pythons besides the one mutated gene that you're focusing on. And I kind of just feel that like a lot of these morphs have been muddled over the years by people just doing things as fast as possible and not focusing on that. And so like with this being a sort of historical snapshot of like some of our early presentations of these morphs, you see like just for instance, because it's on my mind, that's what I was saying. Like if you flip to the section of pastel, there's a Graziani pastel on the second page that is just like so incredible that like, and that's just supposed to be like a single gene. And then you imagine taking an animal of that caliber and then working it up into your combinations. And that's just like, that's just something that a lot of people like, especially nowadays, don't pay attention to. And sort of like back in the day when it would have mattered, people didn't, not everyone paid attention to it. And
it's a very like breeding animal normal behavior, right? And I feel like people have tried it, but what would it take to get the ball python market to live in a world where they accept, even for the same price, just like that they can accept that someone tried to make that look a kind of way?
Well,
like
and
you can argue like high OD's doing that or whatever scrambler stuff, but I mean like where it's very normal to be like, this is my blah 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 line again. What will it take? Will it take like slowing down the morph game?
I kind of think I've like been posed this question too, and I don't. It's something that I sort of just lament about for like pointlessly. I don't actually really like expect people to ever care enough. I personally care about it and make these sort of efforts, and I feel that like a lot of the animals that I've produced through like selective lineage breeding projects over the years are a lot nicer than things that comparatively have the same names in the name. And to me, that's just like enough. And I just wish that like more people, I put the hope out into the universe that other people someday will care as much and might conduct their own lives in that manner. I can't ask. It's like anything. You can't ask that everyone lives their life the way you want to live your life. But if you can, but if you feel you're doing good and you can influence some other people to follow in your footsteps, then not that it's like that, but you know, if you can convince some people that your way is justified, then I think I'm just like glad, you know, I would be glad that that exists in some capacity. I don't think anything's ever going to change people rushing to get the combo. You know, I don't think it's going to change. I don't think there's anything we can do. I think if anything, for the same price, your nicer one might sell while the less nice one doesn't. That's basically your only.
That's true.
That's all you get for it. But to me, it's kind of just like sort of just like the way I conduct myself is just like, I don't know. I just enjoy it and like encourage other people to just like care about it that much. Just because, yeah,
Yes,
like I
that's
was
fun.
saying, there can be polygenics and there can be line breeding, and it can go hand in hand with your morphs, and it should. And not all morphs are created equal, and a lot of them started, as we see in this book, very beautifully, and have been muddled up through careless breeding. Um, and all I say is just like maybe try not to do that, or like maybe don't think you have to, do that or whatever.
Can I ask you a spicy question?
I suppose.
Has it been far enough in the podcast that I can ask a spicy question yet? Or
I don't know. We haven't even
do you
got to
know how?
husbandry yet.
Oh, fuck. Like, do you think the ability to sort by cheapest has ruined people's perspectives on ball pythons in some ways? Like, if I can sort every ad for this combo by cheapest, and I'll just buy the cheapest one, or do you think that a new breeder is going through and looking through all the pictures and be like, I will spend $50 more for this one because I just like the way that one looks? I think some of them do that, but do you think most people just default towards the cheapest one and they're just not even thinking about?
For me, like, it kind of goes with what I'm saying. There's people who think about things the way that I do, whereas I will like happily pay more for the exact one that I want. I think that there are people who are not like me who like don't possess the ability to care or like to see the difference or care. And it's not like there's something wrong with you, but it's just like a different mentality. And maybe those are the people who soar by lowest and pick the first one. I also think I also just think that
we got a super chat. Come for the knowledge, stay for the hot takes. Sometimes I'm like, what if you had a beautiful flicker of your ball pythons? You were trying to espouse the benefits of your particular animals. They weren't competing on an ability to sort to lowest. You're like, this is just $200 because it's just like pretty hot.
I mean, that's why my website exists, but it's just I haven't. It's hard.
Right,
it's harder to draw traffic to yourself versus Amazon or something, But I guess what I was going to say is that I'm sure there is a certain type of person who sorts by lowest and picks the first one. There's also, I think, more people who are a little more discerning. And like in my case, I may sort by lowest and then scroll through until I see the first one that I like would actually consider buying. Whereas it's like maybe a breeder I know, or it's looks clean, or the snake is the lowest price, but the first one with the visual appearance that I actually like, which is probably not the first one on the list. And I think there are a lot of people like that. I think if anything, the sort by lowest thing influences us as breeders listing our animals more than it really affects like the buyer. Like the buyer is going to spend what they feel is fair for what they want. And if anything, like seeing all the ones that are listed for lowest influences us to be like, oh, is that the real market value? Maybe I need to modify my price or something,
Yeah, it does. Yes, for sure.
I don't know.
I get depressed every day.
Or a lot of times I sort by highest and then look at all the ones I like and then scroll down until I find my price range or something,
Right. Yeah, I'm not necessarily like sorting is good in many ways, but sometimes I like, are there perverse effects from that?
I'm sure there are.
That change how ball python people behave specifically.
I'm sure there are. I'm not sure how like big of an actual like evil in practice it is. I kind of think that like the people who sort by lowest and then buy it, they're normally like pet people who want a pet, and maybe they receive that cheapest animal, and if it's healthy, then maybe that's great. I think a lot of times people with that mindset are not the kind of people who will end up like
wanting to breed or propagate.
Yeah, like really getting super far. Like I think they probably stopped there because that was what they could afford, and hopefully it works for them or something, But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's like, I don't know. I see what you're saying. I mean, there's obviously like it may put these bad ideas in your head. I'm not sure like how serious that really is to serious people who, you know.
I don't know. I don't know either. But sometimes I'm like, people will overlook an excellent, reasonably priced snake that they would otherwise want just because it's not also double het for 2 more recessives in today's market. But you're like, well, but like it fits all of your needs. You like it, you can afford it, but they have this like extra pressure on it to be 3 generations ahead. But like maybe it doesn't have to be 3 generations ahead. Maybe it could just be that you like it and you want to include that in your breeding program.
Well, that's
Maybe
sort of
that's
what I was.
enough.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was saying before too. That just like many times in my career of keeping snakes, I have foregone the one with more genes because the one with less genes looked like the genes involved were nicer or played nicer with each other or something.
Mhm.
Like, and that's what I was saying. How like it doesn't seem like there are too many. Doesn't seem like there are. I don't know. It seems like there are some people who don't operate that way, and I don't think I don't think we can change them. I just think it is what it is. But I mean, there are like what you're describing has been me many times. There's many times that I could have picked one with more genes and I didn't because I visually liked the one that was less, and I said I'll take that one because I can tell its components are nicer, and I'll work my way up more slowly. And, like I'm doing that in a million projects today.
Well,
But
I'm telling you, I think you're a rare bird. Honestly.
well, I think so too. That's why I just like try to tell people, and if they care, they care. And if they don't, then it's there's not really anything I can do about it.
Right, that's
I see
true.
what you're saying, but all we can do is like positively put our ideas out there and hope that people agree. Maybe if we don't like crap on them too much, they'll agree with us more easily. But
Yeah,
um,
I don't know.
I
I'm
do
having
kind of what.
like an existential crisis about people's like multi-recessive projects. They're like, it's quintuple het for 5 things that are not even
Yeah,
that even nice looking. If you ever did hit the quintuple
well,
visuals, like,
that's
what
sort
is the
of
point of doing that?
that's the
Sorry.
thing, though. That's what I was saying before. Like in ball pythons and ball python breeding, in my opinion, there are a lot of people problems, and where I think I think lacking the foresight, lacking creativity, lacking artistry is when you end up like that because you're not advanced in your own understanding of morphs or what you want enough to look into the future and think that when I hit that uh, Ultramel, Champagne, Spot Nose, Desert Ghost, Super Mojave Pied, that's probably not going to really look that great. It's just going to look like a bunch of crap, and you just like did it because you put the thing with the most number of names together or whatever, and that's how it is with a lot of these multi hets and recessive or whatever. Is you're racing to create something because you don't really know that once you finally hit the peak, it's maybe not going to be even that great. Maybe one of the hits you made 4 years ago is going to be better. So that's why I just like I don't personally do that. I work with like even like because that's the thing I say too all the time is like genes like what a gene is doesn't really matter like in the long scope of things like whether something's recessive or not will affect its rarity and will affect its price today, but in the long scheme it really won't matter. A homozygous super vanilla super orange dream, um, super mahogany is exactly as hard to make as a desert ghost, ultramel, pied, whatever. A homozygous gene is a homozygous gene. And to me, all that matters is putting them together in the most beneficial combinations, and not just because it's, some arbitrary combination of names that somebody told me was powerful or something. It's about just like being able to predict and come up with those ideas yourself. And I think my take on this is that a lot of people are not capable of doing that. And so, like, they're not capable of really planning a project out into the future. So, when they see an animal that's labeled double het hypopide, they go, oh, that's what I'll do with it in the future because it's double het hypopide. I'll do that because that's the idea that's like literally written down in front of your face. And they just like a lot of people lack the ability to really come up with their own ideas for the future, and something being listed as het is like an idea given to you, kind of, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And all I'm saying is, yeah, just like maybe think past that, you know.
Yes,
And
please.
that just like
To me,
comes
it's
with
like
time.
literally we've gone to the point where we've like jumped the shark so hard. It starts to feel like it's just combo stacking, just all over again. But
Mhm.
we're making it harder. But like, nobody's gonna want
Yeah.
these animals in the end if they're like
But
dirty
just
stock.
don't
Just a
get
different
caught up.
version.
Just don't get caught up in that race, because like we all know that like we can all talk and worry and all this and that about all those things, but you know that when one of these complicated combos actually hits, it's all over the place because it's beautiful and that's all that matters, you know? Like,
Mhm. I love worrying about things though.
yeah,
Sorry. Aurora says,
I
I hope the
understand.
future of ball python is breeding to a type, not just morph, because it's the morph. That would be fire. And then Creative Reptile says, I'm a baby breeder, but I've been working with ball pythons since 2018, doing photography rentals and education shows. And 80% of people always book or ask about normals or pieds. And I've
Nice.
I've caught people's attention with just simple blackhead yellow blade combos. Less is actually more to make these animals beautiful. Right. The
Yep.
morphs don't matter
Cool.
the average Joe. Right. There's like animals that are produced internally for other breeders, and there's animals that are produced for sale to the public that should attract their attention. But sometimes I think the internal ones aren't even that cool. Like I'm just like, oh, I'm good.
I kind of
Pass.
think that's
Somebody
just
else
like
can like
something
it.
that like, yeah, I just think if you're smart in this hobby, you kind of already know that. I think a lot of people like allow others to be blissfully unaware, because then they'll keep buying that snake, you know, or something. I don't know.
Right.
I think most people who like are good at this know that already. Um, it's just like a matter of time before everyone else figures it out.
They'll figure it
Yeah,
out. On
they
page
will
one,
though. You know?
then she gets into like picking a snake. She's
Yes.
specific for ball pythons, but it's good advice for any species of snake. And there's some little spicy takes. One of them was some sellers guarantee that their snakes will eat. We do not understand how any seller could make such a claim.
Yeah,
And
I kind of like. I think in that part and like some of the other parts, you could tell like it's written. It's it's supposed to be written like let's help the buyer pick a snake, but you can tell that this is written by a seller who's had to deal
Mhm.
with these types of typical problems that we
Right, and like
experience.
recommendations for successful transactions is like
Yeah,
that. Like it's very funny.
I
Like
know
as
why you're
someone,
saying that. Yeah,
and then shipping snakes is brought up, which is good. Normal, the information's valid.
yes,
That's why I'm like, oh, this is like it's a big ass book. And then she and he get into ultimate snake room. So like different ideas of
yeah.
keeping your
That's like one
snakes.
of my favorite parts. I mean, to me, that's one of the most important parts, especially for having like for this book being useful to cross species people, is that like yeah, you didn't think that like this isn't just your ball python care guide. They really go into like literally anything you could think of to be successful in herpetoculture, including
Mhm.
like creating a snake room, a snake building as complicated as possible. And um, I that's like obviously like to me, I feel like that's sort of like that's the stuff I'm always like really interested in, is like comparing their ideas to my ideas to other people's setups and things like that. We're always looking to advance in that area.
Yeah, and they do mention it here, and they mentioned it before in the sexing one that you could sex a male ball python by doing a cloacal wash for
Oh yeah,
sperm.
yeah.
And the reason that's relevant is because they're very explicit that like male ball pythons do go through like gonadal development and retraction each year, but they have viable sperm year round. So they are hot to trot more sometimes, but at any time they are DTF. And I don't think
Hmm.
I've ever read that anywhere formally that they're
Right.
doing spermatogenesis year round in ball pythons
Yeah.
anyway. Because some
Just
snakes don't do
that.
that. They only make it once and they store, or they make it in the spring and they use it in the spring and they're done.
Is that more for like colubrids and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting. I also just thought that like that's a method that you don't, that also stuck out to me, where that you don't really hear about that, like using a saline wash to detect sperm under a microscope as a method of
Right. It's so easy to pop them.
Right.
But
But
if
it's
you
also
didn't want
interesting.
to.
It made me think like if you couldn't or something, or if you could do that for some reason, but couldn't do something else for some reason, you know.
Yeah. And it reminded me, this is about goats again, but in goats and sheep farming, they have like this is weird, like a testicle check day when they check all the rams for like swimmer count, like swimmer, how many mutated ones there are. They do like testicle size, fill them up, make sure they're still good. Because like they have to breed 200 ewes in that sort of fertile window that's only like 3 weeks long. So like the vets come out specifically and are figuring out. So I was like, can you ultrasound a male ball python and see how big his testes are and track that? Have you ever seen have you ever ultrasounded a male snake? I haven't. And then I was like, B, can you see the testes distinct enough on like our sort of Timu ultrasounds to determine if you could tell when they're at maximum gonadal fortitude and their testosterone is high?
I don't know. I mean, I don't actually own an ultrasound. I would
It's
like
really
to.
Cool. It's fun, honestly. Even if you don't use it,
I've always sort of like prided myself on like, I've always been like, oh, I don't need it, you know. But I do think like it could be useful, or it could be scientifically interesting. And like you're saying, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here that like gets you thinking, like you're saying, of like experiments and like stuff you hadn't really thought of.
Right. That's why it's good. And it's for any snake species. So if you're like, oh, I wonder if my boa's testes are big this week. I don't know. I never even thought about that part until now.
I mean, it's really interesting. It's you could write a paper on that question alone, whether or not it became like relevant. Like maybe your snake, like you're saying, if your snake will breed and produce viable sperm all year, it might not really matter to optimize the perfect timing of a male or whatever, but it would still be like interesting. I mean, don't they allude to it that like the gonads do like increase in size? I mean, they allude to being aware of it happening, so maybe someone has assessed this,
Right. There's a lot of meat in here. So I did Google some things and was like just reading about it. But then I was like, I'll never finish. So I just kept going after a while. But that's why I think the book is good to sort of have on hand. Then you could just like browse, think about it. They go through all the potential tools you could need in your snake room, different choices of cage type. Like they're not telling you exactly what to do. They're like, well, you could do this, you could do that. This is okay. Right. It's fine. They're not yelling at anybody about anything.
That's what I was saying. Like, it's very open-ended. They're like, here's how we do it. We believe that this works very well, but here's like all manner of way that you could do it another way, and they sort of give you like loose instruction on basically like all the methods, especially like, even up to like, there wasn't anything I read in this book that's like, oh, they're forgetting about this technique that was invented in 2023. Like, most everything here is the same things that everyone else like talks about. Like, what if I give it a big cage? What if I give it bioactive? What if I keep it in a tub? It's pretty much all addressed in some capacity. So if you're like a brand new person trying to figure out what cage type you want, it's like all your options and like the pros and cons are laid out in the book. So it's very complete in that sense.
Right. And they do talk about the risks of like there's a big there's nothing wrong with having like activity structures in a cage, simplified or natural, but they can be dangerous if there's holes in them, or the snake can get stuck or whatever, because snakes will find a way to die.
Yeah.
Yeah, even just like a stick they've been next to for 2 years. Sometimes they'll just wake up one day and be like, I'm gonna go through that tiny hole
Yeah.
for some reason. Keeper responsibilities. Finding escape snakes. All of it's very good, thoughtful. Temperatures. We go into temperatures. I don't know, and it just keeps going. It keeps going. Cleaning, maintenance, disinfecting abilities. So all this is relevant to all kinds of stuff. Quarantine, to talk about that. Which is always good.
It's also like very realistic too. It's like they're aware of most of our faults and hangups and stuff. Like in the quarantine section, they're like, here's how you optimally should quarantine. We all know this, right? And yet how many people like don't do that? So let me like outline some things that can at least help you like be a little better, you know. There's kind of stuff like that in each section where it's like, if you can't do that, then try this, or if you don't want to do that, then maybe do this.
Right. The feeding section I thought was pretty interesting because they're like, ball pythons aren't actually picky. You just suck mostly. Like if you have a snake that's not eating, there's
Agreed.
times when they don't eat, but like for the most part, they shouldn't be particularly picky because they're not particularly picky in the wild. They eat all kinds of species in the wild. And then somewhere, where was it? I don't want to skip ahead. Morbidity in fat females when breeding them, which I thought was interesting. But I think there's a set of people in ball python still who want the fattest snakes of all time.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that thing is not looking good. They talk about like having them be well nourished, but not whatever. And they did summer fasting on ball pythons, which I don't think is particularly common in ball pythons nowadays. Like all summer they fasted them and then they fed them coming into the next year. And they also, this is my favorite part, most female ball pythons re-raised are about a pound in weight, so 400 to 500 grams at 13 months of age. Please, can we make this a rule that female ball pythons do not have to be breeding size by 1 year old? Can we make this a new rule? I'm just like, I've been like disturbed. Like it can happen somewhere, like big growers for no reason, even on one food item a week or whatever. But there's still a large expectation that your snake should be gigantic and breed at 18 months old from new people.
Yeah, obviously that's bothered me basically since the dawn of my keeping or whatever. But it's like, I don't know. You even see like baby snakes that are obese, where and they emphasize that too, and it's something I talk about all the time. How like prey type doesn't really matter once they're matured, but like I just believe that like feeding pinky rats and like rats that have milk in their stomach to baby snakes leads to a morphology of baby that looks different from the one you raise on mice, and I just think it's like very valid. And yeah, that whole, it's kind of funny, just like all these people create problems for themselves that they then go on and say is the ball python's fault. Like, I'm going to grow it as fast as possible. And then we have all these people, what about the 1,000-gram wall where they all stop eating? Well, I don't really experience that. And pretty sure I can tell you why, you know. It's because
like if people could let their snakes grow at a timeline, that means that they are breeding at 3 years old or 4 years old, and they would accept that, we wouldn't have these problems. We would just have like a normal care for like a normal. They would start to treat them like a normal snake, because most boas and pythons, everyone's like, yeah, you breed them 3, 4, 5, whatever, and they're just like, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, well, I hear that. I hear that too. And I was at Dallas. I was talking to a carpet python breeder, and like this always equally grinds my gears when I hear it. And it wasn't intentional or any fault on this person, but you know, they were speaking about carpet pythons to another person, and you know, everyone like warns each other, you know, oh, you can't treat them like a ball python, you know, you have to be a little more. And I'm just like, and I said, and he like agreed with me after saying this the statement, but I'm like, well, you know, I'm a ball python breeder, and I raise my ball pythons like not like how you say to raise ball pythons, or not like how people say to raise ball pythons. I mean, I treat them like pythons, like other snakes, and I don't feed them into oblivion. And I just think I don't think it's good for the snake at all. And I think it leads to, like I said, all your problems, all your 1,000-gram wall, or, oh, it doesn't want to switch from mice to rats, or it doesn't want to eat on Tuesday, or doesn't like this color of rat or whatever. And it's like, that stuff doesn't exist when you don't like push the snakes beyond their means. I mean, like I always say this too, like I keep blood pythons, I've kept colubrids, I've had a reticulated python, and I have a lot of ball pythons, and I don't experience my ball pythons having any more of a lazy food response than any of those species I've listed. Like they're all flying out to eat the first thing I hand them, and it's like due to that, you know, it's due to that, just like raising them to be healthy on a proper schedule. You don't run into all these problems when you don't.
Right. Like a ball python won't sell fast if I mean, man, I don't know, who knows? I don't mean to be like authoritative, but like they tend not to fast if they're not overweight and they weren't pushed really hard all along. They tend to just be like, and so that means like maybe you feed 3 weeks out of a month and skip a week. The prey size is like moderated. It's not like the most obese hopper rat possible as soon as possible.
Well, that's the thing too, that like sometimes I literally like, sometimes it's like I don't even know how these breeders do it, because I'm saying all this, and it's like my most normal, like you're saying, I do think like diverging from a schedule, or having those like occasional fasts or that seasonality is good for this reason. But like on most normal weeks, I am feeding a normal size rodent weekly to my ball pythons, and they're growing normally. So like I don't even know how these people achieve these looks on their snakes. You know, it's like, it's where you must just be feeding them twice a week, or feeding them like some ridiculous thing. I do think, like, to me, a really big component of it is just feeding, is just like you get them started off on the wrong foot when you start a baby ball python on a rodent that's drinking milk, as opposed to a more mature mouse that is weaned and has food and has fur and has muscle and has bone. And I think getting them on that start kind of helps them out. And then, like, personally, I don't really even switch to rats until, well, basically, as a rule, I don't switch to feeding my ball pythons rats until they can eat a small rat, because I believe that should be the graduation of size from an adult mouse, jumbo mouse, to a small rat. So you're going from a mature rodent to a rodent that is still weaned, but is now larger. And I think a lot of it comes from feeding rats to snakes that are too young. I just don't think it's necessary, or I just don't think it's very healthy for them. And I mean, like, I don't really experience the 1,000-gram wall. My males will eat through the breeding season. I don't have snakes, though. I have snakes that stop eating exactly when I know they want to stop eating, which is like as outlined here, which is prior to ovulation and through their developmental cycle. Other than that, like, they exist on a very cyclical nature, and they love to eat, and that's what I like to see, you know?
Yeah, if they're not 1,000 grams by a year and a half, you get accused of maintenance feeding. Right, but you could have fed a snake every week and maybe skipped 1 week for fun so they could clear out and have like a metabolic break. And the snake will not be 1,000 grams by this time frame. Like a very normal schedule does not produce a ball python that's that
what I
big.
was saying is, like, I feed them mostly on a week, like, especially my babies will eat an appropriate, in my eyes, rodent in a week. And yeah, they don't end up like that. So I don't know how you're getting them like that, and I just don't think it's healthy. I guess I'm a big proponent of feeding mice to young ball pythons, and I think that helps with
That is a spicy take. Like I do too, but I think there's a lot of people who are like, you should never let a mouse pass a ball python's lips.
I just think that's I just think that's optics. I think you're rat virtue signaling somehow. like oh, I don't feed mice.
Let's trademark that, copyright that. Rat virtue signaling.
It's like, are you doing what's really right for the snake? Or are you doing what you as a human think is right for the snake without much understanding or much evidence? And like, I've done it. I've received snakes that people said these are eating live fuzzy rats, and so I fed them what they did, and then I watched as their body shape became ridiculous, and then I've developed my own ways, And it's like,
right, like if a baby ball python is fed really fatty food early, they get fat that deposits all the way up to their neck. Like you can see that they're rounder.
They also only retain a certain amount of those nutrients, and they excrete a large portion of it, which is just excreted less when they're fed something that's actually appropriate.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, I feed them a mouse that is the girth of the snake or a little larger. But it's a mouse, and I don't know. And when they are ready to eat a small rat, they eat a small rat that is a mature weaned animal. And I don't know. I find that to be appropriate. I've also, right now, I don't know. Right now I have like 140 ball pythons or something. And say what you will about that, but I have one snake that prefers to eat mice all the time and never decided to switch over to eating rats. For the most part, I do not experience it got stuck on mice. And I will alternate feeding mice and rats all the time. Every once, like my adult males, I'll give a jumbo mouse, especially if I have like a big breeder mouse in my colony. And that's like a perfectly adequate, a one meal this week is an adult mouse to this male ball python, and next week he's eating small rats again.
Oh yeah, it's somewhere there.
They go back and forth all the time. No issue.
A mouse could be a sufficient food item for ball pythons for their whole life. Like you might need multiple mice or something, but like technically,
well, that's what I was saying too. Though that one snake,
there's nothing wrong with feeding a big one. They have like big old fucking giant rats there too that they probably eat too in some localities. But like, I just think it's more about like taking a more moderate approach in general is what they're presenting here, and I agree about that.
No, I agree. And like I was saying, that one snake that I have that prefers mice, I don't stress out all day and freak out and say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you eat rats? I just feed her mice. And you know what she does? She eats mice about 1 or 2 a week all year. And then come breeding season, she lays eggs. And she's just like a small snake that eats mice and lays eggs. And there's no problem. And that's, like I said, that's like less than 1% of my collection that is like that. I don't think most of them are like that. I think, like I do think it's good from like they eat a mouse this week. When they're ready to eat a small rat, they eat a small rat this week. Then they'll eat 2 mice this week. Then next week they'll eat a medium rat. Then in 2 weeks, then I don't feed them for 2 weeks. And then they eat a small rat. It's kind of like stuff like that, which, and sort of as we're saying too, it doesn't have to be just because what I just outlined is like a concept of like a sporadic feeding schedule. That could be like one way to do it, but it also doesn't have to be sporadic. It could be very consistent for one part of the year. I think that's probably like healthier, is that it's like consistent for one part of the year, especially with breeding animals. Then they probably go through the breeding cycle, and then maybe there's a fasting time of year. Maybe there's a time of year when you feed every 2 weeks, and then after that it's very consistent or something, There's like a million ways to look at it, but I guess the one major takeaway is like just learn how to look at your snakes and to identify if this snake is actually needs to eat or not, or if it, and there are times of year when a snake might not want to eat, and just learn that it doesn't want to eat and just like be content with that, I think some people like struggle with that too.
Yeah, I think ball python people, there's a subclass of them that fetishize obese ball pythons, so I don't think we can fix that.
I get it because like back in the day, as a kid, when like I didn't really have much experience with ball pythons, and I would just see these beautiful morph ball pythons online, and they'd be thick and full, and they're stretched out, and you can see all the colors. And I was like, oh, those, that snake looks awesome. And then just like over time, you'll just learn that like perhaps that snake wasn't that healthy. But like it's hard, because I mean, like we're not looking at a human, we're not looking at something we're like conditioned to analyze and understand. At least it comes with experience. It's not like supernatural to everyone. Sometimes they'll see a thick snake and they think, oh, that's how they look. Oh, cool. Like some people, I think just like it just takes experience. I think once you gain more experience, you'll be able to discern like what is really healthy, and I think that's what we should aim for in our snakes.
Do you think people should dissect ball pythons?
Like in school, like instead of frogs or something?
Well, like the best way to know if you're feeding the right amount is to have a snake die, hopefully not on purpose, and you open it up and the fat bodies only go up like halfway up the body.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just
I think people don't know what it looks like for a snake to have fat bodies that only go halfway up the body cavity. I think they don't even know. They think like the snake in their brain looks like this. That actually snake has fat all the way up to its the whole way, and they don't know that is not really the way it's supposed to be shaped. Like because people will look at it like a really normally shaped male ball python on Facebook groups, and be like, "Your snake is being abused." And I'm like, is it? It looks totally normal, like within the normal range of weights to me. So if they dissected a snake that they think is normal and they saw that it was just full of fat, tail to stern, they'd be like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, from a scientific standpoint, that might be interesting. It also might take one person doing that and sharing a post that.
Yeah, I mean, those posts get posted on like berm Facebook groups and boa Facebook groups because you're like a surprisingly not that fat looking berm or boa can be kind of normal looking, like not have rolls, but still be full of fat, like overly fat.
I guess like I don't know if this is weird to say, but like one way I kind of look at it, and like what I was saying before, is that I do think it's like that. Like sometimes it's like a form. Like obviously it's not. I'm not making a direct comparison, but it's almost like a type of like dysmorphia, like body dysmorphia, where like you genuinely cannot, like you genuinely have like trouble perceiving if this snake is overweight or not, because you kind of like have a distorted comparison, which like, yeah, I totally get that. I mean, that like, that's I think it just comes with experience.
If I show a picture of a dead snake, will people get mad?
Like in the book?
No, right now, like on the internet.
If it's for scientific purposes,
it is for scientific purposes. This is a picture I saw. It's a Burmese python. He was trying to get her to lose weight. He knew she was fat. It looks gross, but there's fat all the way up. Like there's another picture it's not showed. Here's the snake. It's obese. The snake is obese. And you might be like, oh, it's a thick, nice looking snake. No, it dies. That's why it's dead. That's why it's being dissected. It wasn't euthanized for the dissection. It just died, heart failure, whatever, exploded. So that's why I'm like, I think if people looked at snake anatomy internally, they would see like one for one, like the way a ball python should look is a version of like this spread of looks, and the one that people seem to like is actually like so far off of the bell curve of normal ball python looks that I don't know if it's normal.
Yeah. Honestly. I mean, I think a lot of people I think a lot of people will come around to understanding this. I just think it takes experience, and unfortunately it takes like a lot of snakes being overweight before you maybe understand that or something. I think like given time, most people do come to understand this.
I hope so.
I think part of it is too just like being able to being able to just say like, yeah, whatever, when someone's like, oh, you mouse feeding maintenance feeder, you know, like, okay, bud, like you keep saying that, I'm going to keep doing what I believe is truly best for these animals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are like some snakes, to be clear, that are built different, especially in like boas or retics, or like they just seem bigger, and you see it in ball pythons too. Some of them are like they just are bigger. So I'm not saying there can't be thick
Well, that's the
boys
thing.
and
No
thin
one's
boys.
saying
There's
no
just
one's
like a
saying that they should be big. They just shouldn't be bigger than their
fat.
frame. You know? Yeah.
Let's just seize this across the board on pets in general. Yes, we love to give them too many treats. It's hard and it's fine, but I think like if your snake fast and it is in a like a corpulent body condition, I think it's you should be like, what? That's fine. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They know they're fat.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe breed them. They'll drop the weight because they just bred. Problem. We're solving the problem, but then when you go to the next time, maybe be a little slower. And then we get into
they speak about how obesity is what they believe to be the like one of the primary factors in infertility. So if enough breeders keep having infertility problems and all their snakes are obese, they may come around to realizing, you know, why that is.
Mm-hmm. And then they talk about bites, which is good for pet people and just people in general. That's why this book is pretty good for everybody, I think. Again, it's like you can see the tooth sizes. It does look kind of scary, but who cares? It's like not that bad. Then it gets into breeding ball pythons. You get the breeding schedule. I did think it was interesting that if you introduced a female with small oocysts with a female with big oocysts, you can induce like a fruit the female with small oocysts into developing her follicles, but it hurt the female who already had developed follicles. And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. Fun fact.
There are a couple things like that where I kind of wonder, like, perhaps this was observed once or a few, you know, like, I almost wonder, like, really? Like, would that happen every time? Like,
like I always thought boas were like fruit. Like, the smell of sexy time was in the air. And so if there's a bunch of mature females together being paired, they would tend to ovulate it together. And you're like, well, it could be the room is the same or the feeding schedule is the same. But it almost felt like it would spiral. Like this one would ovulate, then this one would ovulate. Then like they would ovulate, like inducing ovulation in the other ones. Does that seem crazy?
I think basically my only conclusion is that like, I think that reason, I think that scenario, I think all of these scenarios are possible and are probable to happen in tandem with like 50 other, you know, the problem with these snakes and breeding these snakes is that like they are influenced by way more factors than we can like easily control in any sort of experiment, you know? So, I think that like while that is all probable, I also feel that like for me, I often feel that a lot of it is like environmental or even just like beyond any of this. Like it was literally just like fate from the moment they, you know, started developing or decided to stop. But I don't know. I mean, obviously we do know that like pheromones play a part, environmental cues, temperature cues, breeding cues, body mass, maybe like the proximity of being near another snake, you know, like maybe those 6 females that all had their eggs in a burrow at the same time was like a rare occurrence or something that like normally they might reabsorb their follicles when another snake arrives because they say like, oh, I don't want this one messing with my eggs, I'm gonna not lay eggs or something, you know. Like
yeah, we don't know, like, but it is interesting to think about why.
But it is, yeah, like it's interesting, and like I don't doubt that this instance is documented. I just kind of like wonder like wow, like really would that happen like every time, like if I, you know. Well, probably wouldn't happen every time, but if it happens, if it like happens, you know, guaranteed for a percentage of time, that's still interesting or something. I guess we don't know. It's like kind of hard to tell.
Kids. And then they go on to talk about their theory of slugs, which I thought was interesting, which was ovulation that's premature, not an animal that didn't have enough resources. There's a cat also. To necessarily yolk that ovum. I say sure, but then sometimes I'm like,
I think they're saying
maybe.
Well, I think they're just saying that like a lot of maybe like stress or environmental temperature factors can cause a female to ovulate prematurely, and that if the ovum or oocytes or ovum, or I forget the exact term at that stage, but if they're not fully developed, then they I think they lack the ability to be properly fertilized, right? So they're saying, so like sperm is present, maybe the snake has all the body reserves it needs, but for whatever reason, and they said it can be too hot, it could be that it ate too close to ovulation, so on and so on. But if they ovulate and that egg is not developed enough to be fertilized, then it simply won't be fertilized, even though viable sperm is present.
But I always thought sometimes like 7 of them were done. And so like there was too many cooks in the kitchen and she just needed to ovulate the ones that were ready. So sometimes one sluggy will come with it because there just wasn't you know how the follicles are in these lines, and the ones that are closer to the posterior are bigger than the ones closer to the anterior. So sometimes I was like, when you have just like one slug, I'm always like, maybe they were just like, the one that started later was just like summoned too soon and it didn't have enough time to re-up by the time the more mature ones were ready to go. But
that's
I don't
what
know.
I thought. Yeah, no, well, that's what I thought too, was that like, I thought too that, that this one is underdeveloped. These ones are developed, so they have to go, because if they remain for too long, that is a problem. But it was interesting to me. They almost made it sound like those ones that are developed could just sit around and wait for the last one to develop. But I don't know if that's what they're saying or not, or I don't know what the case is. I have always sort of believed what you said. I mean, there are times, maybe before I fully understood, or maybe before I understood this topic in the degree that I do, I also believed that like, oh, she didn't have enough weight, or it was the male or something, but then I did come around to thinking that, maybe premature ovulation could contribute to this. But like you're saying, I thought that like once the developed ones are developed, they can't just like sit around longer. So they go, and whatever's not ready becomes infertile.
I think premature ovulation does happen. Like she's in a spot and she has to go. I also think sometimes, like she talked about food items inducing ovulation. I've seen that in boas. Sometimes if they're not ready, they'll all slug out because you just forced it. A heat spike will do that. So like in boas, they'll just completely slug out the whole thing. But there's a situation in boas where in a litter, if there's a lot of slugs, often the surviving babies are female, which implies that male sperm is weaker. So I think there are alternative theories still that are viable, that like maybe it's sometimes a little bit of everything, and that's why we can't really peg it down.
One explanation. Like at least in pythons, you do get where there is that distinction between infertile eggs and slugs. So they do seem to arise because of different reasons. Whereas,
and she talks about that. I can't look at my book anymore because I have a cat, but sorry, I just gotta hold the baby and turn the page.
I think, well, doesn't she say that a fully developed infertile egg is more likely the result of non-viable
male subfertility? Sometimes when I have male subfertility, I'll have that. I'll have some parthenogens and not a ton of slugs, maybe like a couple. So like when that has happened, like some males are dumb and they'll sit on the heat and cook their own gonads, and you're like, stop it. So you'll turn the heat down, but they might have like just bunked their whole year and bunked
Because
her
we're
whole
not supposed
year.
to have them on heat.
Listen,
Gotta go ambient.
well, it's cold in my snake building right now.
Yeah.
I have
I
problems.
haven't. The reason I haven't committed to full ambient lifestyle is because I want the room to be a little cool for myself.
Mammal problems. You're right.
Yeah, which is like, I guess is selfish. I don't know. Maybe someday.
My problem is
I
I have other species. They don't want like an
yeah.
85-degree ambient during the day and like 78 at
Well,
night. They would
they
all
outline
flee.
in this. Yeah, they do outline in this book that at least for ball pythons, like you don't actually need an 85 ambient as like people have often suspected in the past. But I do think that for optimal development, at least in the summer months, you need at least like 80 to 82, which to me is like about 2 to 4 degrees too hot. So I
Mhm.
just keep mine like I keep mine like 78 and then give them like a low hot spot because that's about the max temperature where I like don't start sweating.
There's quality of life issues here. Most males, I think,
This is my
don't
problem.
don't cook their own sperm. They have like the behavioral wisdom not to do that. It's like particular males get into the habit of it. Would you believe
Mm,
that? Like where you're like, I had a clown het pied 5 years ago or something. Never sired anything in his life. Bred everything. They either did parthenogenesis or they slugged out.
mhm.
And I just kept catching them on the heat. I'm just like, you're an idiot.
Why didn't you just unplug his heat? What is your room temperature?
Well, that was back in Washington. It was cold as it was real cold there. So
Yeah,
I just
I
think
guess
behaviorally,
sometimes too.
yeah.
Yeah, I just think
Go
like
ahead.
sometimes too a snake will like you may think he's intentionally sitting on the heat. It's probably just that he like for some reason is adverse to sitting in one location of the tub. Like he really likes the back of the tub for some reason, you know.
Probably.
Or, like he's
Probably.
just paranoid, and so he's always wants to be in the back, and then he ends up like that's. I mean, they also address that in this book that like especially, and that's a problem that like a lot of new breeders have when they want to stick a snake in an aquarium, and which again can be fine outfitted properly, but a lot of times it's not, and they have a heat lamp and a hide box, and that's it. And the snake will choose the hide box, and then it'll choose to be at 95 degrees all the time, and that's sometimes they will snakes will often choose comfort over temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah,
they'll
perhaps.
choose security over temperature.
Like for him, I don't know. After all those like poor clutch performance, I just gave him away as a pet because
Yeah,
it didn't really matter anymore
you
anyway.
never know. He could be genetically infertile. Like he could.
Yeah,
There
that's
could be
true.
something wrong. There could be something wrong with him.
Like I do more things to prevent males from cooking their own sperm anyway. Like I'll turn down like their hotspot rows. I'll keep them on the bottom of like a rack or
Mhm.
whatever. But most of them, I just remember like distinct experiences where you're like, this is clearly the male's fault. She tried, and
Mhm.
there's something. It's just fine.
Definitely seems that way sometimes.
I can't read the book anymore. Hold on. And they go into breeding, all the things that are on YouTube videos, but written more coherently and controlled. I did think their nest box discussion was interesting because I don't
Mhm.
give ball pythons a nest box.
That was the one thing that was like I. Hopefully, I'm correct here, and hopefully she doesn't mind. But like, I'm not sure if Tracy even like does that to this day either. I'm sure she does
Right.
for some things, but I'm not sure. The last time we spoke about it, I spoke about how like I had some clutch laying issues. I had like a few snakes, or I had like there was really one notable case. I had one snake this year that just in the past has been a great mom, and then this year just like didn't wrap her clutch at all. I found the clutch like laid and then her just over there. And I was like, why is this? And they were like really desiccated. And I was like asking her about it. I was like, maybe it's because I don't give a lay box or something. And she was like, to my knowledge, I think she agreed that she doesn't normally give ball pythons lay box anymore either. I think maybe back in the day, and I think if we're trying to be optimal here, I'm sure they would love a perfect environment, with which to comfortably lay their eggs. But I think many breeders have learned that like most of the time they end up laying their eggs under some crumpled paper anyway, and it's okay. And it's like, I think probably since this book was written, they probably just found that like, all right, we're producing ball pythons all the time now. Let's not worry so much about it.
Right. She does talk about like lay cages where the whole cage is outfitted with a moist substrate for the time being while laying so they can make a nest wherever. She talked about them picking cold or hot lay boxes and giving them the choice if you wanted a separate lay box. I think that's all interesting. So like you could just still do it if you wanted to. They obviously don't need to.
Yeah, I think this is probably optimal, even though like you're saying, I think most of us probably don't really.
Yeah, I don't. They just like for me, they just hunker down on the hot side. They push all the whatever substrate I'm using away. They make a little nest and then they wait and they lay their eggs and they coil up and then I take them and it's fine.
Yeah, I've never had a
she
snake
would probably like it.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I just like if you were going to give them like a little more space, it'd be interesting to watch the behavior of them picking their lay box and maybe going through it. Like I don't do maternal incubation because of vertical transmission of nidovirus, basically specifically. But if I was 100% sure the mom didn't have nidovirus, I would like to do it for fun one day, mostly. Yeah, because this is interesting behavior.
I think that's really the only reason anyone really does it anymore is for fun. I think you might do it if you ran out of space in the incubator, which I was almost considering, but decided to just build another incubator.
So if you were to do it because you ran out of space, would you move her to a different cage that was big enough to accommodate a lay box so she could be in like a more?
If I was doing maternal incubation, I definitely would like put some sphagnum moss in it. I think that humidity is a lot more important if you're like going to go the full distance.
Right. Because like, in ball pythons, they don't do thermogenesis
for
their eggs. They base her only there to do moisture control to make sure the eggs.
Which I think is actually the more important thing for ball python eggs. That like as long as the hot spot where she laid her eggs is generally proper, I do think that like moisture retention is the most important job of the mother snake.
It is.
And that's what I was saying. That was the problem with my snake this year is that she didn't wrap the eggs, and within the time that I would normally find a clutch and it would be fine, they were completely dried up, and probably about half of them.
She has a hormonal something.
Well, she was a perfectly great mom the last time I bred her.
Right. And, I just mean like maybe she's changed. Maybe she got cancer.
I actually think, you know how they say like, well, and I've experienced this plenty of times too. You know how sometimes a snake will wrap part of the eggs and then they'll leave one out and that one like goes bad instantly in the incubator, either because it was left out or because people say like she knew it was bad somehow.
Well, wasn't Tracy the one that said that like I feel like it was Spotted's. They kicked out a Spotted, and National Geographic was recording it, and they didn't choose to use that footage. And the one that was kicked out did die.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like it sometimes a snake will kick out an egg, and I'll look at it and I'll be like, it has veins, it looks fine, and then of course it'll die, and I'll wonder, I'm like, is it because it got kicked out and it got too cold or whatever? But then sometimes I'm like, this actually happens with like such frequency that I almost do believe that they can tell. And so that's what I was and half the clutch, this clutch that I'm talking about, she didn't wrap any of them. It was 6 eggs. 3 of the eggs died immediately, just started going bad and died within days of going into the incubator. 2 of them seemed to make it all the way, but I cut it open to dead animals. and one of them hatched perfectly fine. But the clutch was almost a near disaster, and I almost wonder if she just knew something was wrong with them and just gave up, you know? Because it's not
Yeah,
like they
like
rolled away or anything; they were just sitting there.
baby snake eggs will, I want to say talk to each other, but that's too strong of a language. But like synchronize development so they hatch around the same time so they could mob predators. I always wondered if a ball python or python mother could look at her eggs, sniff them, hear them, feel vibrations. I don't know. I'm making stuff up now. And tell if there's like a viable embryo somehow.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, it almost feels like they can, and I kind of wonder, like, how. But like the evidence, like I've seen it not just in that clutch. I've seen it in like multiple clutches this year, and many clutches over my time of breeding, where they'll wrap around the ones they choose to, and they'll kick one out, and it invariably goes bad. Like sometimes they don't, but like many times it is the one that goes bad.
Right. Lisa says sometimes they lay too many to wrap. I believe that sometimes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes you can tell that they like messed up and one rolled out, and you'll fix it and it'll be fine, right? But then sometimes like there's one that was rolled out and it looks fine. It has veins. You set it up and it's like molding. It's like leaking, molding within a day, and it's like. And the other ones are perfectly fine. Even some of the other ones that rolled out are perfectly fine. But like one of the ones that was rolled out dies like for sure immediately. And I'm like, and they do it with such precision that I really do wonder. I wonder like that they can tell, and I wonder how. Just exactly what you're saying. Like, how do they tell? That's crazy. But it seems like they really can.
Yeah, there is more interspecific communication than we give them credit for. In snakes, we just don't know exactly how all the time. It's probably smell. I'm assuming there's a smell difference or something. Snakes are good at smelling things. All right, we got to finish this party up. See, there's a lot of content in this book. You can read it for days. All right, then we're talking about incubating eggs. I love their like old school bucket method. It's very like, you know, like bigger python species coated that would need a tall place to incubate because the eggs are egg mound is very tall. That's cool. We love that. And then they talk about hatching baby snakes, different problems you could have, like should you cut? And I don't know, there was nothing wrong with any of it. I was like, yeah, sure. And then like setting up hatchlings. And then you get into medical stuff. And they believe respiratory illnesses is the most common cause of death in captive ball pythons. Sure, but nidovirus didn't exist then, so I wonder if that's what they think now.
Yeah, some of the knowledge on the diseases is obviously just like we've figured out more since then, but
right, they do talk about a kind of cancer of the trachea that I thought was interesting. Did you see that part? I forget what page it's on now. They're just like, yeah, sometimes there's ball pythons are prone to throat cancer, and I'm just like, excuse me. Cancer is one of those things like we can't do anything about it in ball pythons, but there's usually a small heritable trait. So I'm always like, oh god, if people would just be more clear, if they found out like as a 5-year-old the whole line got cancer, I would love to know more. And then there's a long thing about snake mites. I don't know. It's good to me. Okay. If you want to read or you keep any snake species, it is interesting as like a time capsule of morphs in its own way, but it still has sort of a lot of relevant information today, and it's all like coherent. So if you're a new person and you're an adult, it's not written for babies. It is written in plain language, but it's not for babies. It's for adults. You should read the book. How about that? Sometimes they lay too many eggs. Not convinced they will wrap slugs. I've seen them wrap slugs if they were stuck inside of eggs, but I think they're just wrapping eggs. There just happens to be a slug there.
It's possible.
Have you ever seen a ball python wrap an entire?
Yeah, I've seen them kick out slugs too.
Mhm.
I've seen when they're. I don't honestly. I haven't. I'm like. I don't know. I like to think I'm doing something right. I don't get a lot of slugs often, but I've had like one disaster clutch that I can think of. But there was one good egg, so maybe she did wrap them, but maybe she was trying to wrap the one egg and wrapped them all anyway, or something, you know. But I've also seen many times where there is a slug that is kicked out, and the others she's wrapping.
Yeah, slugs are like tacky, but they don't stick the same way. They don't glue.
Yeah. I want to say that, like, I think it's just probably that, like, maybe they possess the ability to tell, but it's not going to like happen every single time.
They have to, because there is the instinctual pre-programming into rainbow boas and anacondas to pick through their litter and only eat slugs. Like somehow they can tell using their tongue and eyeballs. And when they pick up a baby, they spit them out real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So if that can be built into a rainbow boa, can't you build in kicking, like not incubating a full slug clutch, kicking out slugs too into a ball python's brain?
They have to know, like, somehow inherently or intuitively that a bad egg has the potential to become foul and attract flies or predators or disease or something to the eggs, right? So it is advantageous for them to do that. There's like a clear reasoning behind it. We just don't know exactly by what method they may detect these things. I think sometimes too, like, you ever have a snake that like maybe some snakes are just like not as good at mothers or whatever, you know, like maybe they're not as experienced, like especially maybe
I'm
like
not that good of a mother.
I don't know. It seems fine.
Yeah, I think he's fine for now. We'll see. I keep telling him he's gonna shape up. He's gonna, you know, Chris will die of old age or whatever, and we'll be here in like a weird parasocial relationship. He'll be like playing video games for the rest of his life in the basement. And he's like, "What do you mean? I'm 8." And I'm like, "Listen, it's coming. You better go to college." Oh, sorry, that was too much. Did we learn anything?
I mean, if you read the book, you learned something.
All right. I feel like I've read many books in my life, and I still learned something from that book. How about that?
Yeah,
because
I was surprised
there are little things.
Yeah, there were definitely multiple little things on my rereading of this that I was like, oh, I didn't quite remember that, and I don't think I really knew that at all. It's kind of interesting. I've had this book for years, and there's still stuff that I hadn't quite.
So like, if you have it, I don't need it. You could still like loan it out to a new keeper too. I thought about that. Like if you bought it for you read it, you're happy. It's still a really good starter snake book too, where like they've had a snake for a year book. Because it's so exhaustively complete, honestly.
Well, I mean, I received this book this is my original copy still. I mean, I have other copies, but now this is my first one that I got for Christmas when I was like, I want to say 12 or 13.
What a great Christmas present.
Yeah, I know.
That's pretty good.
Right? It's coming up. You could get it for someone else.
I would like another edition. What about that? Is that a crazy ask?
A what? Like a ball python edition 2?
Yeah, it doesn't even need it could like kind of update the morphs, but I don't really care about that part that much. Like it could be just like a snapshot of some morphs that weren't included the first time or whatever.
Just like showing new technology and how, like, for FedEx, like, don't look it up on yellow pages, but you can go on.
Exactly.
There's available now. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say because it's like And I think they tried with this book really hard to make it like timeless knowledge, and most of it is. So it's like, it's not necessary for the most part, but there are, I mean, I think we would love another edition. I just think like Dave and Tracy probably want to put their effort somewhere else right now.
Yes, that's fine.
Um,
I just
I think
sometimes
Paul
I'm like,
might have
oh,
known- yeah.
like this whole section could be updated slightly for the new
Mhm.
thermostat types that we have,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Well, that's
Just
the thing is that
technology.
like the knowledge is here, the knowledge is there, and it's not told in such an outdated way that it like no longer applies. It all applies. All you just have to be smart enough to know that like, you know, I need to choose a modern thermostat and not whatever's
a
mentioned
raincoat.
here.
Yes.
Yeah, just know that it
Right.
says thermostat.
And I think
go pick
that's
you know.
I feel like that's obvious to
Right.
me, but is it obvious to everybody? I don't know. But I think it's been 20 years, so they could if they wanted to, if they had time, if they felt like it. But they don't have to. They did.
But I mean,
what was the other one? They
was
said white lips were sensitive to
like various
hot shot pest strips, and I was like,
chemicals and pesticides,
like more than ball pythons. And I was like,
yeah.
All right, this is the next book. Oh, it's green. It's The Art of Keeping Snakes from the experts at Advanced Vivarium Systems. Philip de Shelly. Can never pronounce the last name. That's the next one. It's a cheaper book. If you're sad, maybe you are poor, you can buy them used for like $6, something shipped, basically. So thanks for coming on, Joe. Do you have any snakes for sale? What do you got?
Yeah, I do. I have a number of stuff that was kind of from like earlier in the year. That's all on my website and Morph Market. I also have like half of my 20 late end of the year clutches have hatched so far. I have like a ton of stuff that's like getting established right now, and tons more stuff that's going to be coming. I like always have a weird timing of my season, but yeah.
All right. Message Joe if you need something.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be
ballpythons.com.
Right. It'll be an extra nice example.
It will.
It will. We're gonna make it happen.
I mean, I try. They don't all hit perfectly, but but the thing is that you try, you know.
Those ones are in the discount section. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you because sometimes I'm like, I don't know what's going on. All right,
That's
let's say
all right.
goodbye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.